Hello and welcome to the Underhand Free Throws 2022-2023 season NBA predictions. We've never done a prediction show before this season, obviously, so how we structured this one is we get into our predictions and we'll have those later on in the week for the Eastern Conference. But before that, we're going to talk about a couple of the teams that were just really confusing or hard for us to rank in the standings for whatever reason. If you're impatient and you want to hear the predictions sooner, we're going to have those uploaded in our podcast form, and the links to our podcast on Spotify and iTunes are in the description of this video. So with that, let's get into some of the teams that were really hard for us to rank this season. The second team that was really hard for us to decide on where to put them in the standings this season was the Toronto Raptors. What is another team that you found really confusing and just hard to really get a beat on going into this season?
Yeah, let's head up north to the Toronto Raptors. Another team, they sort of at one point kind of competing with Cleveland for the play-in spot last year. And where Cleveland kind of faded off at the end, the Raptors came on super strong. Like they finally kind of got their whole team together for the end of it and they went like 18-4 or something like that to finish the season, and had every clever analyst in the NBA talking about how they were going to upset Philly. And then they came out and got blown out by Philly in the first game of that series, and Fred VanVleet and Scotty Barnes got hurt and they went down 3-0, and it just sort of looked like a joke. Or why did we get so overexcited about the Raptors? And then the Raptors came back and won 2 games, and it completely turned around. And everyone was essentially like being like, okay, they're definitely going to come back, and they're going to be the first team ever to come back from a 3-0 hole. It's going to be the final humiliation of Doc Rivers, the final humiliation of James Harden. If you're an Embiid hater, you are excited about that moment. And then Philly just, won another game in fairly convincing fashion, and that ended that. But it was an emotional roller coaster ride, I think, that the Raptors provided. So they are 3 games back of being the 2 seed, like by the end of that year, despite not really feeling like a serious competitive. They seemed like a play and lock for most of the season, and all of a sudden they charged up to like almost reaching that upper echelon of the East. So why be excited about them this year, or why are they a team that's harder to predict?
It was a weird one last year because the team really took off as Fred VanVleet faded. Fred VanVleet had the injury. Was it right before the All-Star game or right after it? I just know he was
right after.
He was.
Really he was injured right after. I'm not sure. I think he did get hurt before the All-Star break, but no one really started noticing that until after the All-Star break.
Yeah, Fred VanVleet really struggled at the end of the year. And defensively, offensively, his shot fell off, and the Raptors played significantly better at the end of the year because the ball was in Scotty Barnes' hands and he was creating a lot of stuff for them, kind of as a point forward, along with Pascal Siakam doing a lot of that as well. You're starting 4 and 5 create your offense for you is truly I think that's the reason why, the NBA nerds love this team so much. Is just they're so weird. Have your bigs be your offensive creators, and they don't have a whole lot of shooting, and everyone on the floor is 6'8", and it's just kind of a wild team. What we saw out of Scotty Barnes, especially at the end of last year, was incredibly promising for his future development. I think a lot of people thought he was going to be awesome as like a switchable defender, and just a guy who can kind of get it into the paint and get to the rim and finish because of just like how lengthy and athletic he is. But no one saw that his game would become so well-rounded offensively so soon. The shot's coming along. The 3-point shot isn't quite there, but he has a nice mid-range game, and the playmaking is awesome. So I think he really is the team's future. I think Fred VanVleet is still a great piece, but as we saw last year, especially during the latter half of the year, I don't know if the Raptors want to rely on Fred VanVleet as their point guard necessarily. I can tell you might not be agreeing with me here. But yeah, I think I really like their assortment of players who can make things happen with the ball who aren't Fred VanVleet.
Yeah, I don't entirely disagree with you. And it like once Fred VanVleet was hurt, he was the longer the season went on and then into the playoffs, he was sort of hurting than when he was out there. He was a very, very good player in the first half of the season before that injury.
Yeah,
Like
no
just
disagreement there.
canning pull like deep pull up threes, really gutsy shots, just sort of like those like just kind of walking the ball up the floor. And there's like, I'm just gonna pull up right now. And also even after he was hurt, the way that he was so willing to play off the ball to keep the ball in the hands of Siakam and Scotty Barnes and how he'd come off screens was a very important part of their offense. Um, Defensively in the first half of the season, he's also, I know all these guys are 6'8" and he's like maybe 6 feet tall. But he's a monster defender on the nail. He blows up pick and rolls all the time. Like he's got great hands. He's super tough. He's super strong. He can guard up a little bit just with his strength. So he kind of was the whole Raptors team in the first half of the season. The stuff that he does well is stuff that they're lacking. Like, he's by far their best shooter. He's probably still their best passer, though. I think that like Scotty Barnes and Siakam's progress in that area is like, hopefully they're pushing him for being the primary playmaker on the Raptors. I think, yeah, the Raptors are this like nerdy fantasy of playing 5-6'8" guys who are interchangeable and can switch everything, and it doesn't really matter who the ball handler is. Like they're flirting with this basketball nerd nirvana, but their half court offense is pretty janky at best. Yeah, I almost sort of what I'm getting from you is like Fred VanVleet is the training wheels that the Raptors like need to get over. So they can,
they still absolutely need him for now. I mean, I think you made a great point with the shooting, and the Raptors do, in some ways, get around what initially seems like a lack of shooting. I mean, they have Fred VanVleet, they have Gary Trent Jr., they have OG Anunoby, who's a good spot up 3-point shooter. I think Scotty Barnes' 3-point shot is going to improve. Pascal Siakam, his consistency isn't quite there, but like he's a capable 3-point shooter. So they have a collection of guys who can shoot. Although I will say I'm a bit worried about the shooting ability in terms of their bench, but at least their starters, they can make it happen. They can make it work. Their half court offense will survive, and they can be so great in transition and at being switchable and versatile defensively. I think this will be a good team. So Fred VanVleet is still a huge part of that. I worry about his health. I worry about Anunoby's health, especially. A guy who's really struggled to get through 60 games.
Yeah, can we get one healthy Anunoby season? Like, I feel like everyone gets excited about him before every year. I think this is the first year where no one's really talking about him, because the 2 years before that, I was like, all right, Anunoby time. Like, I think I remember him getting lots of like smart basketball minds. He was their pick for most improved player. Like, he was a popular name being thrown around at the beginning of the season. And then it just seems like we come to the halfway point of every season, and he's missed some games and just isn't quite what everyone wants him to be offensively or defensively. I will say, like, almost every time that Anunoby's been in the playoffs, he almost always comes through and is either in his early years, it was like he was the guy guarding LeBron back in 2018 and doing a great job. Like, LeBron hit that absolutely silly game winner out of it, where it didn't even look like LeBron was trying to hit it. He just sort of like ran out of bounds and just threw it up in the air. It was like this fadeaway floater off his like right foot, right hand, and it just like perfectly contested by Anunoby, who drove him straight to the baseline. And LeBron just sort of, it was like LeBron was so powerful back then, like he could just sort of not care, and that would make him even more powerful. Like, he was just so relaxed in those moments. It's like he wasn't even playing seriously. He just was throwing the ball up there and it would just drop through the hoop. But like, and people make fun of Anunoby for that shot. I've heard like Raptors, like his teammates will bring it up. But it's like, he played perfect defense. Like, you drive your guy to the baseline, that's it. Anyway, so he was great in that playoff series. He had a huge game winner for them against Boston to keep that in that series.
The one where Jaylen Brown fell asleep on the back door.
Yeah.
Well, it wasn't a back door because he came from the baseline out to the 3-point line. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a wild shot, but and then he was one of their more consistent offensive players against Philadelphia as the rest of the roster was sort of like up and down. Ananobi did some good things. He's got some limitations as a playmaker. He's got some limitations as like a contact drawer. I've noticed this a lot from him. Like it's kind of the missing piece of his game in that he seems, despite being this powerful, strong athlete who is pretty aggressive, um,
Yeah.
after the bump, he'll initiate contact, but it'll throw him off balance a little bit. Like he doesn't have elite balance in those scenarios. And that's, I think,
Mhm.
what's holding him back from just being this really aggressive power wing. And which is why he's seemed to have geared his game more towards perimeter shooting. He was taking some crazy shots last year in Toronto. Like he was getting ISOs on the perimeter. He was taking step back threes in those situations. Like he's definitely someone who's grown his game. But again, like, yeah, let's just get a season where he plays 70 games as a two-way player and makes an all defense team. And I think that again, that's one of the many swing pieces on Toronto that would be the difference from them being a 50 plus win team with home court advantage or them fighting to stay out of the play in.
I mean, even if you're good in the East this year, you're right. There's so much competition that winning 50 games is not enough to guarantee home court advantage in the first round of the playoffs this year.
Yeah. I think 538 was like sort of into the Raptors. They recently released their season predictions. They had them, I think, fourth in the East. I want to say fourth or fifth, which is I think probably where a lot of people tend to have them. But it feels more
Yeah.
like they're being put in there because people don't know if the Raptors are going to pop off or fall apart. So it's like a nice compromise. And it sounds like that's sort of where we're both at with them, where it's like I have them. I can see them. I can't see them winning the East. I just don't think they have that offensive firepower. I think like even a good offensive performance by the Raptors this season, there's so many good offensive teams that like I don't see them getting out of the middle 10 in terms of offenses. Like they're going to be somewhere between the 11th and 20th ranked offense. And I think that's their range. I can't picture them being a top 10 offense. I don't think they'll be a bottom 10 offense either. But so because of that, we're going to need to see the Raptors as like a definite top 10 and hopefully a top 5 defense if we're going to see
Yeah.
them, fight to get into that top 4 seeds.